If you've been struggling to get law of assumption or law of attraction principles to work for you, and you're like, I don't know why this isn't working. I'm not getting what I want. I keep focusing and it's just not working. And I get these comments a lot, right? Where it's like, I'm focusing correctly and it's just not happening. From my experience, from clients that I've worked with, from people that I've spoken with, really it comes down to the intentions that you're setting and where you're putting your focus every single day. And truly, what it comes down to is the habits that you keep. So, in Neville Goddard's lecture from quite a while ago, I don't know when he did this one, but it was one of his, what was that, the 5 lessons? So, this one's thinking fourth dimensionally. He says the only reason you and I are functioning as we are today and are not aware of the greater outlook is simply because we are creatures of habit. And habit renders us totally blind to what otherwise we should see, but habit is not law. It acts as if it was the most compelling force in the world, yet it is not law. We can create a new approach to life. If you and I would spend a few minutes every day in withdrawing our attention from the region of sensation and concentrating it on an invisible state and remain faithful to this feeling and sensing the reality of an invisible state, we would in time become aware of this greater world, this dimensionally larger world. The state contemplated is now a concrete reality displaced in time. So, what is he saying here? As a matter of fact, my understanding and what I've seen work in my own life and with other folks that I've worked with is that what he's saying is that you have to take your attention and place it on the unseen. So it's learning how to emotionally regulate yourself when things are not going the way that you want them to, so that you can place your attention where you desire to be versus where you are now. And it also comes down to changing your habits. When you take a look at an outcome that you want, what are your habits around the way that you think and behave with that outcome? So, the one that I use a lot is if you are seeking the love of another person and you're like, I really want this person to love me, and they just don't respond to me. And so each day you find yourself repeatedly checking if they have responded to you, repeatedly checking if they have read your message. Have they gotten your message? Are they posting online with another person? What are they doing that is not reflecting the type of love that you want to feel from them? And this extends to anything. If you are looking for a promotion at work and you want things at work to go really well for you, but yet what you keep seeking is all the ways that your boss thinks you don't do a good job. They put you down. You're always arguing with them. In your mind, you're finding that your habit is to get into it with them like mentally, right? You're like mentally rehearsing arguing with them all the time. Well, these two habits that you're creating here are in complete opposition of what it is that you actually want. If you had a loving relationship with somebody and they desperately cared about you the same way you desperately care about them, and I use desperately in a loving way, not a bad way right now, but maybe not the best choice of words. But when you have that kind of relationship with somebody and you know that they love you don't check to see if they have ignored your message yet again. You don't check with the same like dreadful feeling when you see that they've read it and haven't responded to it. More of that feeling might be like, oh yeah, I'll talk to them later. I know that they're probably busy or right in the middle of something. It would be something that was more aligned to the kind of relationship that you're looking for. And the same if you had a boss that greatly admired you and respected the work that you were doing, you would not mentally argue with them. You wouldn't have these conversations where everything's going wrong and you think that they always think that you're a dummy and you're not doing things right. That wouldn't be the conversations you have in your head. So you have to remember that habits are physical, they can also be mental, and they can be emotional. And you're going to have a trigger. I almost said a cue and a trigger together. It's either a cue or a trigger that kicks off this routine that you have created. And the best way to start changing your life is to intentionally start interrupting those habit loops. So a habit loop starts with a cue, the trigger. You go into your routine and you get some sort of reward from it, right? And that can either be like a dopamine hit or it's confirmation to yourself or you're feeling secure and safe. If like it's a physical activity, like let's say smoking, you actually get a rush from the chemicals that are in the cigarette and that would do it for you. Like there's all these different rewards that can be there. And you may not even be aware that you're getting a reward, but you are if you're continuing the habit loop. So the best way to start to interrupt these is to figure out when you hit that cue, how can you interrupt the routine? What can you add to your routine? So let's say that every morning when you wake up, you're checking to see if you've been left on red. and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to wake up every single morning. Okay, mic's still on. I'm going to wake up every single morning and check if they've read my message and responded to me. How can you interrupt that cue or that routine? You know that this is what you do every morning, so start to interrupt it. The other way to do this is to, and you can do this with any routine you have. If it's smoking, when do you smoke? What is something you can replace that with? If it is arguing with your boss, does it happen when you're getting in the car? What can you add then to that routine to stop the mental argument? And like, can you start doing positive affirmations? Can you listen to a positive podcast? Can you sing out loud to some music? Can you do an audiobook? Something that interrupts that routine. The other way is to have sustained attention on your end result goal. Okay, so follow along with me here. When you have a goal, you have intentions that you're going to do something to achieve that goal. Now, I'm not talking about purposely going out of your way to try to force a manifestation to come. It's not what I mean. But you will have natural things that come about, like what I was talking about, mentally arguing with your boss or checking to see if you've been left on red. You can decide that you're going to have an intention. Let's say that it's a checking to see if you've been left on red. You can say, my intention for today is that I'm not going to check until noon. Then you're just adding a little bit of time and you keep adding some time. You can also intend that you're going to pick up a new hobby or you're going to go to some new event that will allow you to break free of this like mental cycle that you've placed yourself in. So it's important to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I intend to do these things. If it's arguing with your boss, you can say, I intend on my drive to work to listen to a podcast about how to redirect my thoughts. Or I'm going to listen on my way to work about a podcast or an audiobook that I find really enjoyable that's about like some true crime thing, whatever it is. But you start to make this choice of your intentions. Then before you go to bed, I want you to do what I call the 3 R's. So it's refresh, renew, reflect. Refresh is do something to clean yourself. Wash your face, take a shower, take a bath, something to clean yourself. You are refreshing yourself. The renew is renewal of the mind. You can do a meditation, you can learn something, read a book, go for a walk, something that's very good for your mind, right? You're renewing your mind. The reflect is to actually look back on your days. If you have this goal and these intentions in mind, did you keep them? And if you didn't, that's fine. Okay, what can we do differently? I want you to spend some time in the reflection imagining that you had done it differently. Imagine you didn't check to see if you had been left on red. Imagine that instead you went out with some friends and had this wonderful lunch and just had this really great time and this great day, and you didn't do that. If you did have a mental argument with your boss, I want you to reflect and imagine that you didn't, and that when you got to work, your relationship with her was actually fantastic and she had really wonderful things to say about you. And then go ahead and start to look at tomorrow. What are your intentions for tomorrow? How can you get better than you were today? So let's say that you waited to check if you were left on red till noon. Okay, now tomorrow I'm going to wait till 1 or even 12:15. You can do it in the smallest little things, but I'm going to wait. This time I'm going to show up for myself. This time I'm going to own this that I'm doing. And in the reflect part, I also recommend, and I put this in some other content that I have, but I also recommend that you give yourself a pat on the back for the things that you did well. This isn't only about identifying the ways that you quote unquote didn't do things well or you failed. It's not about failure, it's about learning and growing. So I want you to say, well, yeah, actually, I said I was going to wait until noon and I did. That's freaking amazing. And I feel so good about it. Or I picked up this new hobby and I met these new friends and I went out to this lunch. Or I did something outside of my comfort zone and I went to this like movie by myself, or I went on a hike and got to see the sunset that I never would have thought of doing that because I was too busy checking to see if I had been left on red. Or I started to read this really cool book. Start to give yourself mental high fives for the things that you're doing well, even if it's super tiny, right? Even if you're like, you know what, I said I wasn't going to check if I was left on red until 15 minutes after I woke up. And I did that today. Yep. Pat on the back, high five me. I'm freaking awesome. And I did that. And you really want to start leaning into these wonderful things that you do. I talked to myself nicely. I didn't mentally argue with my boss in my mind. I did something for me. I did all of my 3 R's and I feel freaking fantastic right now. And it's these small changes in your day, these small changes to your habits that one day you will literally wake up and trust me, it will not take long. And you'll be like, holy cow, I'm a totally different person. I behave differently, I'm acting differently, and my life is reflecting something different back to me. I do want to add before I close out really quick that if you do have a desire for a small journal that'll walk you through the intention setting, the goal setting, what kind of values you want, and making sure that for a week you have your goal setting in the morning and your reflection at night, I do have one that's available for purchase on my website. You can purchase it and just print it out. I'll leave the link down below, but you definitely don't need a guide. Just sometimes it's nice to have one if that's something that you prefer. If you have any questions, definitely leave them below. If you don't want to put them out where everybody can see them, it's totally fine. You can send me an email, unleashinghappiness@ceciliahendricks.com. And beyond that, if you like this content, if you want to learn more about how to actually change your life without creating a mental battlefield, without having to say affirmations a million times a day, and without having to do like weird rituals, but really just learn how to personally develop yourself, become a better person, this ideal version of you, definitely give me a follow. I share as much information as I possibly can in every video that I do while trying to keep them short and insightful and very actionable for you. It is definitely my goal to teach people how to really change their life, develop into the person that they want to be, and cut out the confusion, right? Like this should be very clear. If it's not, let me know. I want to make it very clear. And with that, I wish you nothing but the absolute best.